By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to use the Sweep tool to be able to create channels, grooves, and other complex shapes. I'm Mr. Pratt, and I've been teaching CAD and robotics to students for over 10 years now. Today we're going to learn about the Sweep tool by creating something called a boot kicker or a flapper wheel. It's got a lot of different names in robotics. Effectively, what this is, we'll be creating a centerpiece that can spin around, and as it spins, it's able to kick pieces and move them around on your robot. We're going to learn a new tool called Sweep, as well as some different types of construction planes. And then finally, we'll also learn about the pipe tool. So let's go get started. So I've started with making a new blank canvas. As I learned about in the last tutorial, we're going to start making everything in components from now on. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on the top here, select new component, and we're going to call this one the kicker insert. We'll go ahead and make it our active component, and we'll select OK. Once we've made our component, you're going to notice there's this little anchor here. This anchor basically saves it to our top project and anchors it inside. So if we move the top project around, then we're going to move around all the components in there. If you don't want the components, or if you do want to be able to move your components around, you can go to right click and say unground from parent. It's going to remove that little lock, but we don't have to worry about that much for today. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a first sketch. And the first thing we're going to make is we're going to make this kind of centerpiece. And if I go ahead and hide these other pipes, this is the first part that we're going to be making. You can see that we're going to have these kind of little rubber tubes that are going to stick on to these arms. So let's start with making this center cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and create a new sketch. I'm going to create it on my XY plane. X is the red, Y is the green, or the top face. I'm going to go ahead and make a cylinder. So I'm going to grab my circle tool. I can either press circle here or press C. We're going to do center diameter. And I'm going to select one that's about 30 millimeters in diameter. We'll select OK, or press return to be able to save our selection. And now we need a place for our axle to be able to fit inside of this boot kicker. So I'm going to go ahead and select create a polygon, and we're going to make a circumscribed polygon. You can choose either here. It doesn't actually matter. So if I, again, use my center origin point here, I have a 7 millimeter diameter. So I'm actually going to go ahead and divide that by 2. But because we're eventually going to be 3D printing this, if you're going to CNC this, this is good enough. If you're going to be 3D printing this part, you want to add a little bit of tolerance because you have to account for that thermal expansion. So I found that 7.2, 7.3 works pretty well, at least on a bamboo printer. So I'll go ahead and press return. And now I've got my kind of center point in here. So before we finish our sketch off, the last thing we can do is add a rotation constraint to our polygon. Because as you notice right now, we're able to rotate it around. We don't want that to be the case. So let's go ahead and grab a horizontal vertical. And what that's going to do is just going to constrain our sketch in a horizontal plane. So you notice that here, this line, it now has to be constrained on either a horizontal or a vertical plane. And now that we've got a fully constrained sketch, you'll notice it's got this little red check, this little red lock on it. That's what we want. Fully constrained sketches are the best way to go about things in Fusion and parametric design. So let's go ahead and finish off that sketch. And now we're going to extrude this sketch out. So you can either grab the extrude tool or press the E. We're just going to grab this main face. Just supposed to rotate, and we're going to pull up 10. Let's pull up 8. 7 to 8 seems about right. And I'm going to make this a new body. We'll select OK. Now what we need to do is we need to be able to make one of those little tubes or one of those little fingers that our tube can go ahead and slide onto that finger. But we need to be able to draw on this face, but it's a curved face. So making a sketch on top of that is going to be challenging. What we can do though is we can come up to construct, and we can construct a tangent plane. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a construction plane that's tangential or on a single line parallel to our surface. So I'll go ahead and do that. Select our point, and when you make a tangent plane, you can put it at any point along your cylinder. At this point, it really doesn't matter where we put this because this doesn't need to be exact. This boot kicker is just going to rotate around. So I'll go ahead and select OK. Now I've got a new construction face that I can build a sketch off of. So if I click Create Sketch, I can now select this new plane that I just constructed. And now we can go ahead and actually make our circle. Now in order for our boot kicker to, if we were to expand and reduce the size of the cylinder, we would also want to expand and reduce the size of our tubes. So we're going to project some geometry again. Again, we don't just want to choose a circle that is a random diameter because it's not going to automatically update with our design. So I'm going to say create, project, and I'm going to intersect. So intersect if you remember from the previous tutorial, allows us to select some sort of face and it will draw in where our intersect lines are. So I'm going to go ahead and select these two lines as my intersects. And as I come in here, you'll notice that I get this line that is intersected, which actually kind of isn't important. I can delete that. And we've got our 2 points here that are actually intersected. So now if I grab my circle, I'm going to make it a 2-point circle. I'm going to reference this point and that point. So because we have referenced this off of these 2 projection points, if I finish this sketch and we were to update the length or width of this extrude, let's say we make it 9, you'll notice that our sketch automatically stretches, which is right on for what it is we're looking for. So I'm actually not going to add a dimension for this strength, this one, because I want it to be the distance between these two. All right, so with our cylinder finished here, we can actually go ahead and extrude this out. So I'm going to go ahead and collect the extrude tool, select our face, and we're going to pull it out. Let's say something like 10, maybe 15 millimeters. Seems about right for you because we want enough meat for that tube to be able to sit on top. And if we don't have enough meat, it's going to be a little bit challenging. On this sketch, I'm going to do something new. Instead of direction one side, I'm actually going to go ahead and choose 2 sides. And then for the other side here, when I drag it out, I'm also going to say new body, but rather than a specific distance, I'm going to say to object, select the object that I want, and it's going to automatically extrude out in a nice curve. Notice how it actually matched the curve of that body, which is pretty smart. Rather than just cutting into that piece, it's automatically going to curve around. Now we don't want to make this piece a joint at this point because we're going to want to circular pattern it around. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and select a new body as well. We'll select OK. And now we've got a nice curved piece that fits inside. If we go ahead and open our bodies and hide our main cylinder, you'll notice we have this really nice looking curved piece. Now let's go ahead and actually draw our sweep in. What the sweep tool does, which is a new tool for us, it allows us to have some sort of path or profile, and we allow us to move a solid face around it. So for instance, you can see in this little sketch here, it's got a kind of curved path. Down at the bottom, it has a circular drawing, and then it has sketched that circle as a 3D shape all along the line. What we are going to do is we are going to make a cylinder around the outside of this, and we're going to extend it all the way across. 2 ways we can go about doing this. One is we could either make this top cylinder, put it in and then join it in, or we could cut into our current piece. I'm going to decide to cut into our current piece. So we're going to have to learn about a new sketch tool again. So I'm going to say construct, and I'm going to construct a plane along a path. And the path that we're going to choose is this circular path here. So we end up with a plane somewhere along this path. Again, it does not matter where you decide to put this. Over here, for that plane along that path, is a proportional distance. So 1 is 100% along the path, 0.75 would be 3/4 of the way along that path, and whatever have you. You can pick anywhere you want here because it does not matter. I'll go ahead and select OK. And we're going to create a new sketch on top of this path here. I'm again going to create a projection, and we're going to intersect from this line here, just so that we know where that center point is. I'll select OK. And now we've got that center point. So now I can go ahead and grab a circle based off that center point, and we will find something that looks about right. I think I'm going to choose about a 2 millimeter cut for this one. I'll go ahead and finish that sketch. And I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to rename my sketches as well. So we'll rename this, and we're going to call this one Kicker Cut Sweep. We'll call this one the Kicker Arms. And this main one we will call the main body. So now we want to do the magic of this little sweep tool. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sweep. The sweep asks us to either we want multipath, path and guide rails, solid sweeps. We'll talk about guide rails in a later tutorial. For this one, we're just going to run through a single path. It chooses the profile that we want to choose, which is the object that you're going to be sweeping around in this case. And the path is going to be the direction that's going to follow along. Now in our case, we're not going to cut this because we want to create multiple of these. So rather than cut, I'm going to go ahead and create another new body because this is going to end up being a tool body for us. We'll go ahead and select OK. And now we've got our new kind of tubular looking body here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and repeat this down using a rectangular pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and look at it from the left. We'll go ahead and create a rectangular pattern. We're going to select bodies this time, and we're going to select this main body here. Now for axis, you'll notice that we can't actually select the top or bottom of this. But because we've been making everything around the origin point, underneath this kicker insert, I can open up its origin, and we can actually see where the origin point is on this axis, and we can select our y-axis. That is going to be our green line. And now I'm just simply going to drag this out until we get to about a distance that I'd like to see. And we're going to add in a few more, just so we end up with some nice little bit of ribbing on top of this. And that ribbing is going to allow us to get a little bit extra grip so that our tube is not going to want to be able to pull out as easy. And I'm pretty happy with this, so I'll go ahead and select OK. Now we've got our main kind of ribbing started here. Now I don't like having this sit at top because I want the external diameter of this tube to be the same as this point here. But right now you can see it's actually sticking out and above. So rather than using these tubes in this case and combining them, which you totally could do, I'm going ahead and using my combine tool and I'm going to cut these in. So my target body is going to be a main cylinder, and my tool bodies are these top tool bodies here. Our operation is going to be cut, and then we do not want to keep the tools this time. So let's select OK, and now we've got a nice kind of looking body. To be able to finish off so we don't end up with these sharp lines, I'm going to grab my Filet Tool again, and I'm going to go ahead and select on all of these edges. Now instead of selecting these edges, you can also select this face, and it's actually going to select both edges as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and select this face, and I'll pull it in until I get to a point where I'm about happy with it. Looks like about a 1 millimeter is about what it is that I'm looking for. And I also forgot to select this face there, but it looks like it doesn't like that last one. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this selection. I'm going to create a new selection set, and we'll select these 4 faces again. We'll give it a 1 millimeter, grab a new selection set, grab this one edge, and we'll go ahead and pull it in until it curves in a little bit, maybe 1 mil again. And now if we select OK, we now have a nice molded looking section. Now before we can continue on this, we need to be able to pattern this all the way around, because that was kind of our whole deal with this. So let's go ahead and create a pattern, and we're going to create a circular pattern. Now the objects are going to be a body. We're going to select this body. Our axis is going to be our center axis, in this case our Z axis. You can either try to select it here, or again you can select from your origin and your Z axis. And then you can make a 3-wheeled kicker, a 4-wheeled, or a 5-wheeled kicker. I find that either odd numbers work best. Either a 3 or a 5 wheel is better. 7 starts to get a little bit crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a 5-wheeled kicker. You could also make it a 3-wheel kicker if you're concerned about weight on your robot, and that will reduce some of that. Again, our distribution will be full. We'll go ahead and select OK. Now at this point, we can combine our bodies into one solid shape. So let's go ahead and select combine. Our target body, our tool bodies are all of these bodies here. And rather than cut, we're going to go ahead and say join, so that we end up with a full component. And now we're with one single body. Before we move on, let's open up the appearance tool by pressing A on our keyboard. And you can search for a nice color to be able to separate these two. I'm just going ahead and drag on a yellow so that I know where my tubes are and where my main point is. And that's our first boot kicker section done. Let's go ahead and fold up this component. And let's go ahead and create a new active component. And we're going to call this one the pipes, so that we're left with our new pipes. If you remember from last time, if we were to make the entire component or the entire assembly active, we can go ahead and press this circle. And then if we were just to activate the pipes, it would hide the other components that we know which one is active. Now know about these pipes. These pipes are just for a modeling feature. If you were going to 3D print this, you can go ahead and 3D print it right away, and then grab some standard surgical tubing or athletic tubing, you know, those kind of stretching resistance bands you use for working out. You can just go ahead and slide that in and you would be done. But we're going to put this in just to be able to show it off in our model. In order to make that tube, we have to be able to know where the center point on this axis is. So we can go ahead and construct a new plane, but instead of a plane, we're actually going to construct an axis through a cylinder. And at this point, we should be able to select our cylinder, and it will select that center point of that axis. Go ahead and select OK. And in order to use the pipe tool requires a single path. So now we've got our axis, we need to be able to have a plane that we can actually draw on top of. So I'm going to select construct plane at an angle, and it allows us to create a plane on an edge or an axis. So now if I were to rotate around and select our axis here, we can actually have our plane. Again, it doesn't matter where this actually ends up going, just as long as you have just as long as you've got a construction that goes through your line. Go ahead and select OK. And let's make a sketch on top of this plane here. Now for this path, it really doesn't matter how long the path is, but again, I'm going to go ahead and create a intersect from this line here for where it actually intersects out so that we can know where our line should start. So let's grab our line tool, go ahead and grab our intersect point, and we're just going to choose something random. Let's say, a 60 millimeters what we want our pipes to be. So we end up with a 60 millimeter pipe. Actually, that looks a little bit crazy. Let's go ahead and make this, say, a 40 millimeter pipe. That looks a little bit better. So we have a little bit of floppiness on the top and then nice rigid support on the back. We'll finish that sketch. And now that we've got our path, we can actually go ahead and create our pipe. The pipe is sort of an easier way of making a dual or a hollow cylinder. So I'll go to create, select the pipe tool, and then the path is going to be this path here. We can go ahead and move around, and now we can change the width of our pipe. In our case, I'll just find something that looks about right. And then we can also go ahead and select hollow, and at this point we can have a nice little offset for how much we'd want to actually go ahead and look into the middle of our pipe. So for my case, I might make a 2 millimeter, maybe a 1.75 as a hollow. And then our outside thickness, we might make it about a 2 millimeter thickness section. So now we've got our nice little pipe. We'll go ahead and select OK. Now we're going to circular pattern this pipe around. So I'll go ahead and create a circular pattern. Select our body. Our axis is again our Z axis. And we will just do 5 so that it automatically meshes up with the other ones. Now the last thing we're going to do is add some appearances to here. I can open up the A, and I can search for rubber. Oops. Rubber. Drag it onto our pipe. And then I could drag it to each individual one. I could shift select each individual one, or I could just drag it onto the component itself. And it's going to remove any appearances that have already been applied. In this case, yeah, we're going to remove them. And now it applies to every single body in our shape. So now if I come back up here, make this our main active component, now we've got our main boot kicker ready to go. And if we were to put an axis through here, add it to a motor, spin that around, you would be able to pick up some objects pretty efficiently. So that's the end of today's lesson on learning about sweeps, learning about circular patterns, as well as a few more constraint tools and a little bit more practice using parametric design. Next lesson, we're going to get into recreating some reverse engineering drawings, and there are going to be some challenges for you to be able to continue to develop your sketch skills, because the more you practice, the better you can get at this. Next lesson is also the final lesson in the basic beginner section of this tutorial series, so you should have enough skills at this point to be able to go out and start actually making your own 3D designs. So I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you in the next tutorial.